Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the third day of the Professional Care Workers Week 2023 and our seventh webinar. I really appreciate your time if you're joining us live right now, but we're also going to be recording this webinar and putting it on our YouTube channel afterwards to make sure that anybody who'd like to learn about their well-being and how to look after themselves better can access that. So let's start. I am delighted to be joined by M.Suhail Mirza, who has been involved in the health and social care sector for over 20 years. He's delivering this part of the commitment of New Cross Healthcare, where he is a board member, to support social care workers for wellness. And M.Suhail and I have spoken many times, and you are very, very passionate about care workers' well-being, aren't you?
Of course.
Yes, so M.Suhail is a former equal rights lawyer and author of Langbusson's UK Healthcare Workforce Report and host of the Voices of Care podcast series, which has featured many people from our sector. And there'll be more of those recordings coming later in the year. He is also on the board of Future You, which offers universal free access to healthcare education to care workers. And that's something I'm very excited about. And I think it's a great initiative and a great idea. He's a global speaker and writer about wellness and supported the NHS workforce during the height of the COVID pandemic and continues to do so through webinars across the UK. And today, he joins us as part of the Professional Care Workers Week. So thank you, M.Suhail, very much for your time and your expertise. I'm really looking forward to this webinar and you sharing what you know and how care workers can look after themselves better and hopefully improve their well-being.
Thank you very much, Karolina. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be able to share these steps with people who'll be watching this. And I know the great work that the Care Workers Charity is doing and has done, and quite rightly during this important week, Professional Carers Week. I think we need to understand that that word, to reiterate, it is a profession, and the complexity that's now required of care workers in terms of what they do to help people has become more demanding. And therefore that brings its own challenges and it brings its own pressures. So that's fabulous. So I'm happy to walk through with us here the key steps that will hopefully help. Aisha, I think, has got the slide deck, if she can put that up, if that's available, if we can share that as a slide deck. That should be there. Thank you, Aisha. So the key here, if we go to the next slide, actually, the key here that we need to focus on, if you just click the next point, please, Aisha. I've spent my time working with a number of people from the NHS, from social care, and wellness is now very much at the centre of all of this healthcare challenges. What can we do about it? And the goal of today is to share simple steps that people can use to enhance their emotions, get more of the emotions that they want, and lower less of the emotions that they don't want. And thirdly, if you have in your head a voice that can be very, very critical at times, we're going to quieten that down. That's the goal of this particular webinar, and we're going to give you some simple steps at the end to do that. Now, there's two promises that I will make. If we go to the next slide and click the next point, please, Aisha. See if that comes up. We're going to be looking at what inner wellness is, and we're going to look at these practical steps. And the two promises that I will make are, A, whatever I'm sharing is based on experiential knowledge. In other words, this has worked either for me or for the people that in health and social care and wider sectors that we have worked with. And secondly, I promise to tell the truth. Now, it's always when a lawyer tells you they're going to tell you the truth, a former lawyer, you might get a little bit skeptical, but what that means is that some of the steps are not going to be easy. They're simple, but they're not easy. They're designed to be able to fit into your life on a regular basis every day to make a big difference. And hopefully that you will see will be the case. If we go to the next slide, please, Aisha. These are a list of words that care workers, people working in the NHS have shared that characterize how they've been feeling at various points in the previous 6 weeks or 8 weeks at maximum. And I'm just going to share, and if you have a chance, if you want to share in the chat, what words would describe how you're feeling right now, I will say that I'm pretty optimistic. I'm quite content, but I'm feeling quite overwhelmed. I don't know, Karolina, based on the extensive work you do around the sector, that I guess, and some of these words or all of them will apply to quite a big chunk of the sector. It's probably a very challenging time right now.
Yes, that definitely echoes with what we're seeing from care workers. I would add in the tired. I think people are very tired, burnt out. But main thing that seems to be popping up is anxious about the future, anxious because of the cost of living crisis. I think quite a few people would probably add depressed in there as well. So, but what people also say is when they work in social care, they feel happy to be supporting other people, and they get this amazing feeling of fulfillment from being able to support the lives of others. So it's a mixture, I think, more on personal level at the moment in terms of anxiety or worry because care workers are a low paid workforce, but in terms of job fulfillment and being able to support others, it's mainly positive.
Brilliant. And we've got a poll that we can conduct, Aisha, for those who are present and for those who are watching the recording. It's something to think about. Are people feeling a better sense of well-being now compared to 6 months ago, or worse, or the same? It'll be really interesting to see what that result would be for those who are attending. So maybe we can come back to that at some point, because I think it'll be quite important. I don't know what you're feeling in terms of that, Karolina, in terms of the workforce. Are you seeing an improvement or deterioration over the last 6 months?
I think that's very difficult to say. I think consequences of COVID, we've got people experiencing PTSD, so there are issues around that. Same because of workforce gaps in terms of vacancies. We're seeing burnout because people are doing more. And cost of living crisis is adding in. So I would probably lean towards worse rather than better in some ways. But at the same time, we are seeing a particular part of the workforce for people who apply to us for grants, or people who go online on forums and ask, complain, or talk about more negative things. So it's easier to see the negative. I don't think that's to say that there's only negative around.
And anyone who's attending, if you want, you can by all means put some comments in the chat about which words would describe you if you have the time. If we go to the next slide, most of the people that I'm working with, where we want to go as people is to have any one or more of these. And what is most important to people at the moment amongst these aspirations? I find that it's a mixture of these things that people tend to want to aspire to achieve. And for me, the key thing to be able to move from that place of uncertainty or anxiousness, as you say, Karolina, to any one or more of these. If you click the next point, please, Aisha, we need a vehicle that can take us there. And that's what I call inner wellness. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that briefly in a moment. I just wanted to give a bit of a background in terms of what brought me into this wellness world. Sometimes we're faced with challenges that we can't solve. Bereavement, unfortunate incidents that can't just be solved with positive thinking. And for me, that was an important element. 10, 12 years ago, I was faced with the challenge that my wife at the time, I had three stepdaughters who were all in their teens when I'd married, and we had our own daughter who's 13 now, but was 2 at the time. And I knew there was something not quite right. And my wife actually had the courage to admit to me that she regretted having our daughter. Now, that's quite a hard thing to cope with, because how do you solve that problem? And that's what threw me into, it can't just be positive thinking, etc. Is there a place deeper within that we can all go to when we're faced with things we can't change, that can connect to our true essence and give us some peace or some certainty, even as we navigate our way through anxiety and worry, and reduce those things? Is that possible? And the work that I did around the world, I met a number of people who helped me to find that inner wellness vehicle. I went to the world's traditions. I didn't stick just to the Western model. Anything evidence-backed I put together to help navigate the emotional impact of trying to find a way through all of that. And that's what I'm just going to briefly share with you now. If you go to the next slide, Just waiting for that to come up. What I mean by inner wellness is mind, body, and spirit. We have to cultivate the whole person. And at the center of all that is love as the most powerful force that builds leadership of ourselves and those around us. Now, normally when I use the word love, people look at this and think, this is a little bit fluffy. It's a little bit woo-woo type of conversation. What does this mean? Where did you get this from, Suhail? And when I found the source of it, I found it really interesting. If we click the next 2 points, 2 clicks, please, Aisha. Who said this? This came out of the US Military Academy at West Point. So next time you see a Marine, if you think some of their training's a little bit woo, good luck with that conversation. But they put spirit as the highest of their 6 domains of development. Why shouldn't we? And if you click the next point, which is quite interesting, the evidence is now showing that even military units in the field can be more effective when you put love, hope, and vision at the center of what we do. How do we do that? Let's go to the next point. Next click, please, Aisha. And if we click the first slide, what we're seeing is a revolution. Over the last 20 years in psychology, we've moved from a study of pathology, what makes people do bad things or deviant behavior, into what helps them to flourish. Positive psychology, the psychology of spirit, multicultural psychology. And now, as Professor Miller says there, even science is confirming what traditional wisdom has known for a long time, that even negative emotions such as despair can lead to an expanded awareness if we know how to do that. And if we click the next point, please, Aisha, the evidence here, this is from Rupert Sheldrake, science is now backing up a lot of these practices which we can do on a daily basis within ourselves, which I'm going to share, to hopefully open up that expanded awareness, consciousness, self-love. So if we click to the next point, what this brings us together, it's around the approach of inner wellness. It's beyond simply emotions. It's emotions, our thought process, social well-being. And if we click that next point, it's mind, body, and spirit. So all of these things. And what I mean by spirit, a sense of connection, meaning, and purpose. Can we find that? Can we put that into our daily lives? Now, I wanted to go to the next slide. We're going to do another poll if we can, because Karolina, the Care Workers Charity, it's one of the great missions is to support the wellness of care workers. And I've been a big fan of the work that it has done. But it's interesting, even now, after so many years with wellness at the center of debate, there are still many people who can't feel comfortable enough to go into work, wherever they're working, and bring their true self and admit if they're not in a good place. And it'll be interesting if we, before we run the poll, Karolina, I was going to ask you, are you still seeing that? Because I still see people, health settings, legal setting, construction, people still feeling uncomfortable or not trusting enough or safe enough to share that actually they're not in a good place, they need some support, their well-being's not in a good place. Are you still seeing that, or is there more of an acceptance of that now in care that you're seeing with your members?
I think there's more acceptance than there was 10 years ago. I don't think this year there isn't more acceptance than there was last year. I think there's still a huge amount of taboo around mental health. People are scared that if they disclose it at work, it will affect the hours that they get or their employment altogether. I think as a society, we're still not quite as good as we should be in talking about this. There's actually going to be a session at the Care Show next month around some leaders sharing their mental health struggles, just to show people it's okay to talk about it and that many people go through it. I think my current experience of the society altogether is that there's this weird pressure to carry on no matter what and not talk about it, and people are uncomfortable when you raise something. Because earlier this year, I had some medical diagnosis, and I also was put on medication for my migraines, which has quite strong side effects. And yeah, if I ever mentioned that to anybody, people that don't really want to necessarily listen, not everybody, but I think there's still this quite big discomfort around talking about things like that. So yeah, I think it's challenging, and we need to do better. We need to do better supporting care workers, because when you consider what care workers take on every day in terms of their emotional strain that the job is, because no matter how wonderful care work is, it is still a huge responsibility for lives of other people, which creates a big emotional strain. And because in social care, we don't have debriefing sessions, great across the board occupational health support. We don't have enough people working in the first place to have time to grieve, for example, when you lose somebody you are supporting. Sometimes you have to go to the next shift and move on. I think we really need to do better.
No, I agree, and thank you for sharing that about your own journey in terms of the migraines, etc. And I think on that point, the care show is I'm looking forward to. I think you will be there. Hopefully, we'll be speaking together on the Voice of Care podcast on that. And I think the sector needs that, and people sometimes forget around that what you've said. The care workers. Sometimes it's very vulnerable people. Sometimes the care worker is the only human being that that particular individual may see for in that day or a few days. As you say, the bereavement that you move from one to the other, it's a essentially human function. So we're just going to run a little whole. I think, Aisha, you've got the question here. If I think you have. If you haven't, then people do you know anyone who is reluctant to let their colleagues and employer understand when they feel anxious or worried? Yes or no? So if you have the opportunity to conduct that, it'll be really interesting to see what the feedback is. I agree with you, Karolina. It's a lot better than it was 10 years ago, but I think there's quite a big journey still to go ahead. And I think people living when they're working on shifts, etc., will find that quite difficult. I think one of the big reasons why there's that gap is people sometimes need to show the world one face, and what's going on inside is very different. So if we go to the next slide, social media seems to tell us that our world should look a bit like this. You know, we need to be looking a certain way, feeling a certain way, having this, having that. And the reality for many people, if we click the next point, Aisha, is that actually their world is very different and they could be falling upside down. And that's exactly what was happening to me when I explained what happened with my wife. We didn't hold the marriage together, and I had to bring that to an end some years ago through an act of breach of trust, which I knew I then could not stay there. And sometimes life still tests you. And my wife had a stroke in front of my eyes 7 days after we'd made that decision. And I had a choice. We all have a choice: stimulus, response. What are our values? And I stuck by that situation and helped and got great support from the healthcare system to bring my wife back from the stroke. But the marriage didn't survive, as I said, but I took the opportunity as I was sitting at home to share some of the things I'd learned on that journey. And people wanted to understand what they were. How did you find a place inside that could help anybody when we're facing bereavement and other things and pressures? And if you click to the next point, Aisha, I put that into a book called Many Mansions. That was the foundation of the wisdom model that I've created. And I just now, in the second part of the webinar, want to go through that with some actual steps that people can take who are listening now, who are watching this. Busy shifts, people running around, there's so many things to do. A few minutes a day that can make the difference. That's what I'll hopefully do. So if we go to the next slide, all the people that I've worked with in health and social care, frontline staff, non-clinical staff, people from different sectors, everyone's different, but the steps that they've taken to get to that place of more certainty and peace have been the same. The first thing, if we can click on that, is we have to have clarity of where we are now with real honesty. Are we trying to lose weight? Are we trying to improve our career? Are we in a relationship that we want to make some changes to? Where are we now? We need clarity. The second point that we have to have is creativity, because we need to solve, if we just click to that point, we need to solve a challenge. It can't be at the same level that it creates. So how do we use our heart and our imagination and trust that? The third thing most people that I work with have to also go through is contrition. Now, that sounds a bit counterintuitive. Contrition means really to have a sense of apology or sorrow, confession. We all, or most of us, and I know I was the case, carry a bag as we're climbing the hill of life. filled with regret. Everyone I've worked with, they've big regrets, small regrets, things they should have done, things that they didn't do. We need to have some self-kindness and empty that bag, and we'll explain how we can do that. That then leads us to have the freedom, to have the courage to look forward, freeing ourselves of these things, setting some goals about what we want to achieve. How do we do that? Now, these 4 things are about you as an individual, but to get true fulfillment and flourishing, we have to look beyond ourselves. Now, in care, the week that you're celebrating, the profession you're celebrating, it's part of the DNA in that sector. And here we need to have compassion, which is the next step. And that means, it literally means to suffer with, but what it means is to think of others and serve others. We need to find a way to do that. And the final point in bringing all of this together, we need consistency, because it can't just be about one webinar. It's got to be every day. How can we do this every day? And I think, Karolina, you were speaking to me earlier before we came on here, is that the wellness issue, that's a theme that's come out strongly. And the sector, I think, in distinction to the NHS, which has lots of structural support for wellness and burnout, we've got big vacancy numbers still in the social care sector. It doesn't have the same structural wellness support. Would you confirm that?
Yes, I definitely agree. There isn't consistency across the sector because every employer does their own thing, some of which are more helpful, some are less helpful. Some employers don't do anything at all in terms of support, and that's very worrying. I am quite encouraged about the CQC's new framework, where employers will actually have to evidence workforce well-being and enablement. And I hope that will push people to do more. And I completely understand the difficulty that some providers find themselves in terms of, where to find money to pay for it. But not all of those interventions have to cost money. A lot of it is about culture, and it's how you treat people with respect and dignity. Because I think we forget, maybe I don't forget, some people forget, that care workers are not just tools to deliver care. They are human beings in their own right, with their own rights, with their own needs and dreams. And when they are not met, that really affects them, and it affects their ability to deliver care. And I think we live in this world where we have this hugely unfair expectation of care workers to deliver outstanding care, whilst not checking that they're actually well themselves. With the cost of living crisis, care workers being mainly on low wage, we are seeing people struggle to pay for basics, to pay off their mortgages, rent, and buy food. So how can you expect somebody who goes to work hungry every day or is worried about feeding their children to do their best? But it also can't be just about meeting the bare minimum and saying, okay, I pay you just enough to pay your bills and food, because anybody doing full-time job, especially care workers who support lives of others, should have enough money to go for a break, to have a holiday, to breathe, because of how emotionally demanding the job is. So yes, I think we lack consistency, but I think we also lack clarity about the importance of care workers, but also perceiving them as human beings in their own right, with their own needs and dreams.
Absolutely, and I think that's wonderfully put. And as you know, in the Voices of Care, I had the privilege of spending time with a number of representatives from social care, Ona Smythe from Skills for Care, Ian Trenholm from the CQC, Martin Green from Care England, Jane Townsend, Home Care Association. That's in England, and we've also had representatives from the other nations to confirm this. So I think you're right. I think there's a call here. I know the Minister has come public to support this celebration of care workers in this week, and we hope that the professionalism of the care workers will be matched by the professional level of support and funding that the sector needs. But so going back to how can we, in that circumstance now, what can people do of their own accord while they wait for employers or the structure around us to support them? That's what I'd like to go through in the second half of the webinar, with the actual breakdown steps. We're going to, if we click the next point, Aisha, we're going to just look at the first segment here, clarity. So what happens if you're wherever you are now, what are you facing right now? Do you want more empowering emotions? Are you feeling anxious? Do you want to improve your health, career? Everything starts with this first clarity step. And if we go to the next slide, I'll just walk you through that and then come up with some of the steps. The first thing you need to do, wherever you are, let's say you want to improve those emotions of well-being and acceptance and flourishing, or want to go on a career path, the first thing we have to do on our own or with others is to know exactly where we stand. With absolute honesty, if we just click that point, Aisha, that will come up. Where are you now? What's your true feeling? If you want to lose weight, if you want to get fitter, if you want to do a marathon, where are you now? That has to be done with honesty. The second thing is we need to then organize our resources around us. What assets do we have? Which people, which opportunities? We have the Care Workers Charity that supports the sector, for example. Who else can support us? I've been privileged enough working with somebody within health and care, senior individual, who's very respected in their field, doing really good work, but unfortunately has been involved or was involved with an abusive personal relationship, which they had stayed in for too long. And they found it difficult to move because people can get stuck. But they actually then said, actually, I have expert help from here. I've got resources here. I've got a friend who has been through this before. So there's always things around us, and we need to just sometimes be aware there's more we can tap into than we realize. The third element of getting started in all this journey is to negate and remove and reduce, I should say, some of those draining emotions that we have: worry, anxiety, fear. We need to reduce them as much as we can. How do we do that? Fourthly, we need to make a decision. Where do we want to go? What do we want to achieve? And make that very clear. The big step from there is to execute, actually jump into the swimming pool, take the step for the running that we want to do in the morning. Will we do that? How can we do that? And the final thing to make this work is we need a ritual. We need this to become part of our daily regime, even when we're so busy doing our work, school runs, other obligations, and as Karolina said, the other worries we might have. We have to somehow find this time to be able to make this work. So I'm going to walk us through that, and it'll be really interesting, Karolina, to hear from you around these steps to see what you've heard and from your members and wider field, and from anyone who's participating to share too as well. So if we go to the next slide, Aisha, I want to talk about what are we trying to reduce. And the big three for me, if we click the point that come out consistently when I speak to people, is fear, anxiety, and worry. These are natural things. They're emotions that serve us when we use them as they're meant to be used. They can be hugely debilitating if they become overwhelming. So two steps I want to share, which people can take away straight away. If we go to those, please, Aisha. The first one is gratitude. Now, the evidence from positive psychology and lots of studies in the last decade or so show that if we can inculcate gratitude, this will make a significant difference to our sense of well-being. What does that mean? What do I do and what do others do? What do I recommend? 3 minutes a day, preferably in the morning before the world starts spinning. I give gratitude for the big stuff. What do I mean by that? Those things that in our lives, if they were taken away, would have a hugely profound effect on us. Our loved ones, our health, our friends, our opportunities, our home, whatever they may be. I literally spend a few minutes thinking about each of those things, being grateful for them. I actually extend this and remember the faces of 1 or 2 people from my own family who are no longer with us, who had a big effect on me, a positive effect as a child and as a teenager, and I thank them. I say it out loud. So I might be a bit crazy if you worked with me in an office, I would be saying thank you out loud. The second thing I do is I give 3 minutes of gratitude for everyday stuff. What does that mean? I write down at least 3 things. For me, I have made it into, I'm just going to bring the notebook if I can. You see the notebook here, there's lists there. I write down 12 things for which I'm grateful that took place in the previous 24 hours. Now you might say, hang on a minute, I had such a bad day yesterday. The kids were playing up and I had an issue I couldn't get here because the traffic was bad. We're always going to have good, bad, and indifferent days, but there's always something to be grateful for. Was the internet working? My friend sent me a message. My daughter gave me a hug. The electricity's working. Amazon delivery arrived because I had to make sure I gave that as a birthday present. But the tech was working here with Aisha and Karolina, as I linked in earlier. I gave because sometimes, anyone seen tech not work sometimes? So these simple things, if we make it into a habit, at the end of the week, I've got 84 things I can look back on. If you do 3, you'll have 21. What's the point of all of this? It doesn't mean you're hiding away from things that are challenging. It just allows us to think there's more abundance around us and within us than we sometimes realize. Now, the Americans have Thanksgiving Day and they make it formalized. I don't know, Karolina, you speak to a lot of people in care, lots of care workers and leaders, and you yourself, of course, a shining example through your own career within the sector. Is this something you've seen? Is it something you do? Do you know other people who've used this as part of a daily or a regular exercise to help get their minds on focusing on abundance?
I know some people that do it. I know some people in the sector that run courses specifically around the gratitude practice. I know some care workers sometimes mention it on online forums. I think the biggest barrier to that for people is getting into the habit, remembering to do it and finding time to do it, because even though you say it's 3 minutes a day, I think for some people, even though it's 3 minutes a day, can be difficult. So just, I think, believing that for people to learn that it works, believing that it works, and then getting into a habit of actually doing it often enough that it makes a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. And remember, at the end of the day, you don't have to do any of these things that we're sharing. They're not prescriptive in that sense, but they have worked. I remember when my life was going in the direction I did not want it to go, it felt difficult to do this because you didn't want to think about that. You were focusing on all the challenges. And as you say, Karolina, 3 minutes, people live very busy lives. I think the habit is if we can do that in the mornings, it's ideal. Or whenever work and life starts, because people work in different shifts, but it can be during the day. It can be at the end of the day. Whatever suits individuals, I think if you try that for 3 minutes, write that things down or verbalize it, see what effect it may have. It'll be interesting when we catch up next, Karolina, to see if people have tried it, who've joined here, who watched the video, to see what difference it has made. As you say, you have to ritualize it, which makes it the difficult thing. Now, the second step I wanted to share was visualization, short-term and long-term. And what this means is to look ahead of where you want to be. Maybe it's a health goal, maybe it's for family, maybe it's a career. You want to become a manager or a leader, finish a course, get an accreditation, whatever it might be. And to visualize, spend 3 minutes a day visualizing where you want to be in the short and long term. What I do 1 year and 5 years. That works for me. That's now. It doesn't have to be those years or those time periods. I was mentioning some earlier, of course, the individual I worked with who was in an abusive relationship. And for them, it was, look, I just need to think about the next week or the month. I can't think beyond that. And that's okay. What's the outcome and what's the reason for this? There's lots of evidence that show people who perform at high levels do this, particularly in sports. They visualize the outcome, but in all areas of life. If we get our mind to focus on what we want, it will help us have that sense of intuition with ideas. I mean, we all, I'm sure, who are here or watching, will have worried about things not going right in our jobs, or, as you say, Karolina, the cost of living, or we're worried about our children or friends or spouses or family. That is a form of visualization, but it's visualizing what you don't want. So actually, we're all quite good at it. We have to switch the focus. I was grateful to do a course in integrative medicine with Professor Brent Bauer at the Mayo Clinic, and he calls this guided imagery. So the goal is 3 minutes. I don't know. Are you someone who visualizes, Karolina, when you look ahead? Do you see pictures or is it words? I've got to know you a little bit, and you seem to be a great.
Pictures, definitely pictures, yeah.
Right. So for Karolina, if I was working with her alone, I would say, right, think of whatever the goal might be. Picture yourself there, receiving the certificate or completing the run, whatever it might be. Feel the emotions. Make it a very visual picture in high res. That would work for Karolina because she's actually, I'm not that visual, and I tend to verbalize with some pictures in my head. And sometimes you'll get a voice in your head saying, why are you doing this? You've got all this stuff to deal with. But we've all had our journey. And we must have done this even if we weren't doing it advertently. I'm not going to pick on you, Karolina, but I mean, I know your story from where you started in care and where you know the things that you've done. Did you have at times where you would set yourself some goals and things? It doesn't have to be a master plan, but there would have been an element of looking ahead of where you wanted to go.
Well, I actually have to say things that have happened to me were quite surprised there wasn't a planned career plan, but there's one image that I always have in my head that always guides whatever I'm doing in this role or my previous role, is for lives of care workers to be better.
Yep.
Which does two things. It either is an overwhelming panic attack weight of anxiety, because it is, or is the thing that keeps me going and keeps me motivated and passionate, because where care workers are at the moment isn't where they should be. Care workers deserve much more. So the image of care workers being better recognized, better paid, more respected by the society is the things that drives what I do at the charity.
Thank you for sharing. And I've, as I said, you said earlier, I've had the privilege of speaking to you now several, and that comes across really clearly. And actually, there are other leaders who you will know who are connected to the Care Workers Charity and have been. Martin Green comes to mind, extremely passionate. And like you, if we can all visualize this, perhaps, you know, it keeps us going. Yes, it'll be overwhelming because I've been involved in the care sector for 20 years, and you know, it being properly funded and respected, it seems to have been a conversation that's been going on forever. And sometimes it does actually say it gives you a sense of overwhelm. But on those days when you know what you're doing and the work that the charity does, the thousands of care workers that you have supported, I guess making that difference is the thing that keeps you going through some of the tough times. And this will help for everybody if we visualize. They can be small goals. They can be very simple things. They don't have to be grandiose. You know, I'm a former amateur boxer, and my hero is Muhammad Ali from a generation or two ago, and he was always visualizing, always saying these things, which helped him, and hopefully it will help you. Okay, if we go to the next slide, please, Aisha. We also have to make a decision on this journey in terms of incorporating these steps to access who we are. And that's a decision about, if you click the next point, self-love, self-worth, self-value. If I ask the question, do you love yourself? That's not meant to be narcissistic. It's meant to be, is it healthful self-love that we have? Can we say that about ourselves? Do we say that about ourselves? How often do we really think that? I think that's where I'm going with it, because once we have that acceptance, it makes life a lot easier to be authentic. So 2 steps to share with that, if I may. If we go to the next slide, please, Aisha. The first one is forgiveness. I talked about contrition earlier. And many of the people I've worked with, when things get tough, my inner voice used to remind me of the things that I had not measured up to, the things I promised to do and didn't do, things I'd done which I regretted. And many of us may have done that. And what I found was actually what I needed to do was I confronted those, and in solitude and in sincerity. And this was hard. I said at the beginning, I'd make that promise to speak the truth. This is hard, but it was extremely worthwhile. I spent quite a long time on my own, on a regular basis, revisiting all the incidents that I could remember where I carried some regret. Now, I had family members that would be very happy to remind me of things where I had let people down. I don't know if you have family members that do that. I certainly did. But in addition to that, I confronted it fully with emotion. It was it was painful for me. But I then said sincere sorry to anyone that I may have let down, not to them personally, but visualize doing that. And over a period of time, many tears were shed. I now don't have that. I don't have my voice reminding me, hardly ever. I wouldn't say it's completely zero, but hardly ever. If things get stressful, I don't get that inner voice that comes and does this for me. And we can also do this on a daily basis or a weekly basis. Sometimes we are under pressure. We might speak sharply with our loved ones or friends, lose our tempers. Road rage, I think, is a good one on school. If you do school runs, you can come and watch road rage, trust me, around us. And we need to be kind to ourselves and allow us to say, I'm going to forgive myself. So this is about self-forgiveness. It's not about forgiving others who may have done things or not done things. That's a separate pathway. It has more complexity. I'm just talking about ourselves. And everyone who I've seen do this have lightened that bag and they've made it much freer for themselves. One of the most moving things for me in my journey over the last few years was to have a session of confession with a Jesuit priest. I'm a Muslim by background, and that's my faith. But we sat together and did it. I'm not recommending people do that. That's up to you. But it was a great path. I wanted the next step is contemplation. Now, I'm using that word.
Sorry, Suhail, can I just go back to that point, please?
Of course.
I think by nature, care work is being very giving.
Yep.
Very easy to take advantage of. I put others before themselves.
Yep.
I think probably the most common feeling in care workers, and this isn't from research, this is from experience, from talking to people, is a feeling of guilt. Now, I would say, having had a look at your slides before and listening to you now, for many care workers, this may be the most difficult step, especially in the situation we've got in the sector now, where we have such staff shortages that many care workers find themselves not being able to finish the job that they want to be doing or delivering the level of care or the time of care that they would like to. And that is a difficult feeling to walk away with from every visit. So I think, to me, is the step of forgiveness, and I appreciate you talking about it. That would be the most difficult for many care workers and the one that really takes the biggest strain.
I don't disagree. I think, as I said when I was explaining my own journey, I'm not a care worker, but I was involved in family business and provided care for people in their homes. And I remember the frustration we had with 15-minute visits and begging the commissioners to give us more so we could do the proper work for the people that we were supporting. So I completely understand, and it is the most difficult. And I think on that point, so thank you for bringing that up. We do have huge vacancies. It was 165,000 in 21-22 skills for care, and 152,000. It's reduced, so it's a huge number. And I think what I would suggest to anyone working in this field is there's a big pressure that you're working within, the funding environment, all of these things you've talked about, Karolina, from your own experience and expert view, is that when you've given it with your heart, you've done everything you can, the guilt that you feel, I think you have to accept inside and say that you've given your best. If you know you've given your best, we can all advocate so that the system is better. This is the brilliant work that you're doing, supporting the workers. And there's trade organizations, Care England, Home Care Association are doing this, the National Care Forum, they're doing all of these things. So I think it's when we carry that guilt, it's important to ensure that we don't let that become overwhelming. And it will be hard, but I think we need to be kind as we show the kindness, as the carers show kindness to the people that and love to the people that they care for. That also should be something that they inculcate for themselves. I think that's important. But thank you for sharing that. Okay, conscious of time, contemplation, I wanted to talk about to enhance self-worth. And what I mean by contemplation is the same as meditation or prayer. I see all three of them as exactly similar things, depending on people's background. Some of the people I've coached and worked with, people are religious and they have their prayer, their silent prayer that helps them. Others meditate formally through a process of meditation that can be guided or otherwise. And contemplation for me, I just use that word to make it neutral. Let me share what that is and how it works. And I'm going to be interested to see how many other people do this. It's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be immediate. 3 minutes is that golden 3 minutes again. 3 minutes a day where we sit in silence, or we say a word perhaps that might help us focus, or we look at something that might help us focus. And all we do is observe our breathing. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And we just do that for 3 minutes. There's no big goal of enlightenment or etc. If you do find it, please let me know. Please let me know, because I want to know what that looks like. And the evidence is very, very strong now. Herbert Benson, the cardiologist from Harvard 50 years ago, wrote a book called The Relaxation Response, introducing this really into the American society around meditation, relaxation. It was called The Relaxation Response, his book. And you don't need to be religious to do this. I mentioned prayer. Sam Harris is a very famous atheist, wrote a book called Waking Up, Spirituality Without the Religion, and he does meditation. Just before I go into the benefits of this, interested to know, 20 years ago or even a bit longer, no one was doing this or admitting it, certainly in England. I don't know if you've seen, Karolina, an uptake. And Aisha, I think we're going to run a short poll just to find out how many people do actually meditate or know someone who meditates, if we can bring that up. I've seen more and more people who do meditate or have at least tried it. I don't know if that's your experience.
I've heard from many care workers that they do, that they try. I think quite a few of them actually find it quite difficult to meditate because they have so much on their minds, so many worries, and to even get themselves to the state to where they can meditate, they find it challenging. But I think it's like many other interventions or tools. It works for some people. But yes, I've definitely heard of care workers meditating.
So hopefully I'm going to make it, demystify it, and that's why I try to keep it really simple. The method to use is 3 minutes and observe. That's what, just observe. Breathe in, breathe out. Don't do anything else. Don't engage with anything else. If you think the word will help, like om or love, then do that. Now, going back to your point, if you've never done this before, you're finding it difficult, 3 things will happen. You've not done this before. Number one, your voice in the head will go even more into hyperdrive, telling you that you're too busy and you shouldn't be doing this. Ignore that. The second thing you will observe is, if your voice was anything like mine, much of what goes on and is being said is either untrue, fantasy, and very negative. If I said what I hear my voice saying to me or about me to someone else, I'd probably get slapped on the face. So there's a lot of things that I get, and our goal is to simply observe that and just check how much of this is real, because it goes on all the time for most people. The third benefit you'll get over time, 3 minutes a day, you'll have a distance from the voice and you. You're the observer. As you're hearing my voice now, you're not me. The voice in the head is not you. I believe there's an essence that sits behind that, and I believe that all people are brave and beautiful in that essence. We need to touch that from time to time, and we'll discover that the voice is a product of the personality and the vicissitudes of our life, the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things that we faced. And that became a big story for me, because I used to spend my decades fighting that voice, battling with it, shutting it up, trying to ignore it, spending a lot of energy engaging with it. The reason for that was, I know it's politically incorrect, but I grew up in what was called at the time a broken home, which was unusual for my demographic background, and in a challenged economic environment. And my father used to send me to the butcher's shop to buy meat on a weekly basis. And when I used to go to the counter to collect it, I would have to say to the proprietor, every week, my father will come in later to pay for the meat. Now, I was old enough to realize by the look on the proprietor's face that actually why I was being sent as a young teenager was that we didn't have the money to pay for it some of the time. And to say my dad's embarrassment, I went. Now that had a big effect on me. I took that image with me a lot, even when I was a lawyer, whatever it happened. Now doing the contemplation, I realize, and that when that voice comes up, I call him the boy in the butcher shop. I now embrace that voice and say, I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm not that Suhail anymore. And that helped me to quieten. And what the effect has been over the period of time I've done this, that critical voice is quietened down enormously. It's not gone, but it's quietened down a lot. And that's helped me to flourish a lot more. I feel lighter. I feel more resourceful. So I agree, Karolina, it's going to be hard for people, but if we keep it simple, there's no goal, there's no exam, you don't have to find some great answer to anything. It's about being with you and making that a primary thing. Okay, we've got 10 minutes to go, just under, so I'm just going to wrap up with the last couple of steps, and then if there's any questions, we can take those, and I welcome your further comments. So next slide, please, Aisha. We need to ritualize this. Why? If we click the next point, this will give us the focus and the vision and the confidence to do these things and to do the things that we want to do. It'll help with these simple steps if we can incorporate them. So how do we ritualize? Next slide, please, Aisha. Two things. Again, 3 minutes each day. Language. We want to use language and texts that help us to transcend and get out of the day-to-day sense of time that we have, just for 3 minutes. How do we do that? It's about, and I use the word text here as meaning anything that is the product of the best of human creativity: film, TV, books, art, literature, nature, sculpture, anything that cinema, film, whatever it might be. There'll be times when you are just Karolina, not the CEO of the Care Workers Charity. You are just you. I'm just me. Aisha's just her. Those times when we're probably with friends or family, where we can laugh out loud, be silly, cry, be excited, do whatever we want to do. There's a well-known CEO who I worked with on this in the NHS, and she told me that one of her joy moments of doing this is listening to music loud while hoovering, right? And that makes her feel amazing. Now, what do I do in those 3 minutes? So I'm going to make a confession. I'm an ABBA fan. So for a few minutes, not every day, but now and then, I will listen to ABBA. It makes me feel wonderful. To make it a bit more contemporary, so that I'm a little bit Stormzy, Blinded by Your Grace, is also an amazing, moving song. I'll see clips of film over and over again because they make me laugh or they make me cry. It's about being authentic. And if we can find that 3 minutes, that will be really, really powerful. I'm not going to embarrass you, Karolina, but there must be times when, it might be music for you or film where you can just switch off and just be yourself.
Music, Pink Floyd or Tool, mainly.
Okay, right. Okay.
I'm outside of my demographic for the kind of music I listen to. So.
Yeah, you are. You definitely are. Oh, but I mean, if anyone saw that, just that little bit incident, and I know you're doing a fantastic job. You've been dealing with migraine and everything. I just saw your face completely light up. I mean, just, because that moment, I think probably you were thinking either of a song or doing listening to that song. I was listening to Bruce Springsteen the other day. That was my little foray. And it just gives you that 3 minutes. Just do 3 minutes of it. I do excerpts for anyone. Do you remember the film Star is Born, Lady Gaga? I watched that 4 times because it's made me very emotional, but I like bringing emotion out because that's when we're authentic. Okay, final point, daily success ritual. We're going to make this personal and be the primary thing we do as far as we can. And that comprises those 5 steps we've talked about, 3 minutes each, 15 minutes. Gratitude for the big stuff, gratitude for the small stuff, the contemplation, the visualization, and this 3 minutes of authenticity, Pink Floyd, ABBA, whatever it might be. If we can spend 15 minutes, ideally, at the beginning of our day, the difference it makes is profound over time. I can say that personally. I can say that with the people I've worked with. There's no exam. You don't have to do this. But if I could put a gun to your head, which I won't do, just metaphorically, this is what I would say. It would make all the difference because it can be done each day. Try 1 exercise, try 2, try 3. do it whenever it suits you, but we owe it to ourselves to be kind. And but the goal of all of this, if we go to the next slide, please, Aisha, is that wherever we are, we need to be there fully. That's the goal. Just because the world, I think, is full of plastic people. It's crying out for authenticity. Care workers have to be authentic because of the quintessentially human, intimate nature of what is done in the sector, which is wonderful and to be applauded, as you say, Karolina. And what we have to do is to help each of us take those steps each day that can allow us to be fully ourselves and turn the dial, hopefully, with support eventually from the politicians and the lawmakers that we want to press to give us more support and recognize the professionalism of the care workers that you're celebrating this week. Final slide is, I've got my email. Those who are attending today and those who will be listening to this, if there are any questions that you have specifically about any of the steps, please email. I'd be very happy, and I promise to answer them. May not be immediate, but I will promise to answer them. So thank you. I think we've done it within 4 minutes to go. Thank you for everyone who's attended. Thank you, Karolina, for inviting me. It's an honor, and thank you, Aisha, for all your support in getting this done. So if there's any questions from anybody or any further comments from you, Karolina, I'm delighted to have supported the Care Workers Charity in this really important week on behalf of New Cross.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions in our Q&A box, but if anybody has any, pop it in now, please. And I just wanted to say thank you very much, Suhail. It's been really helpful. I think not enough care workers take time to think about themselves, though they don't have the time to think about themselves. And I hope that by doing this and by sharing it with people, we'll be able to help care workers look after themselves better. We have a message from somebody just saying that they wanted to thank us for the session, and thank you for attending. So yes, I think many people will hopefully find it helpful. We've recorded the session. We'll be sharing with everybody as much as possible. And if anybody uses any tips from this session and would like to come back to us and say, well, it is actually has worked, it has improved my life, that would be very helpful. Thank you again, Suhail, and thank you, Aisha.
No, that's great. And the other final quick point, we will make available to you there's 5 short recordings, just 2 or 3 minutes that I've done, which go through those steps because we've gone through them quite quickly. I just take a little bit more time to walk through what they are, and people may find them helpful. You can put them on the website and give access. So we'll be doing that over the next week or so for whoever wants to have that. But thank you, Karolina. Thank you, Aisha. And I look forward to seeing you at the Care Show. Hopefully we can keep promoting the brilliant work that you're doing and in our own way, help support the well-being of the professional care workers.
Brilliant. Thank you very much and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Take care.